ominous, isn't it? It's very ominous. The writing's on the wall. A dead man walking. That's him. He's gone. He's away. It's an ominous time of year anyway. Certainly as for Rangers, it has been the last 3 seasons. Maybe we're just in a kind of tradition now. It's a kind of muscle memory. We should be having major doubts about certain stuff at this time of year, but never this time of the football season. But this season of the calendar year, Halloween coming up soon. The clocks are going to go back. It's soon going to be a lot darker, a lot earlier at night. The nights are going to be a lot longer. I don't know, Damien the Omen. I don't. But there's a whole lot of Romanians have just turned up at Ibrox, and for me that'll always resonate. Like the press turned up, and then the fans will be turning up. The players will turn up, the Romanian players, and then there'll be maybe more Romanian fans, whatever. But when I was a kid, I got 2000 AD comic. I used to get that. I got the first ever 2000 AD. I wish I'd kept it, worth an absolute fortune. But Fiends of the Eastern Front was my favourite 2000 AD series ever. It was Carlos Esquerra. So Carlos Queller, just when we saying Carlos Queller, it just reminded me of the name Carlos Esquerra, which he was my favourite artist in 2000 AD. Kind of grubby, intense style, very, very scribbly, very scratchy. It was brilliant when he did Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd was the best character in 2000 AD, but he was the artist in this, my favourite series. It's actually set in the First World War, not a magazine, but sci-fi, the future, what have you. But this was in the First World War, and it was a Transylvanian unit within the Romanian army. And of course, at night time in the trenches, they would all turn into bats, and they would fly over to the enemy trenches and suck the blood from them, kill them by sucking their blood. They were a unit of vampires. That kind of age as well, kind of 10 to 12, I was right into the Hammer House horror films that were still on TV at the time. It was just a kind of bloodthirsty age for me. But I've always felt that way. And the vampire thing, they're dead, but they're still there. And that's Celtic fans have been telling us for years. That's what it is with us. We're zombies, but the vampires would be. You couldn't see the reflection and stuff. And we've got this thing going on just now. The Romanians were talking about it. They were pushing it at the press conference, the pre-match presser yesterday, where they're focused on a player who's registered, who's a Rangers player, who scored on his 26th birthday a magical goal straight from a corner kick in the darkness of the Challenge Cup for the B team, condemned to the B team. And they're talking about him more than anything else. That's what they want to talk about. And he's not registered. He's not playing tonight. He was never going to be playing tonight. And yet, there's also one manager who's very much registered to be appearing this evening. He's got a job to do, but people are talking about him as if he's already gone, as if he's already away. It's really weird. It's really ominous, and the strangeness, I think, is kind of compounded by these coincidences. I mean, that's Tuesday night. Yanis Hagi, as I say, scoring on his 26th birthday against Stenhousemuir in the Challenge Cup, and 26 years ago, 26th of October 1998, Rangers beat Leverkusen in Leverkusen in the UEFA Cup under Dick Advocaat. There was the famous pivot by Barry Ferguson, turning the entire Bayer Leverkusen team at the halfway line, playing in Johansson. He plays in Gio, and we take the lead, and Johansson scores again in the second half, beat them 2-1, eventually put them out after a really nervy second leg at Ibrox. But that was a major moment, and then that was the night, that was the day anyway, that Yanis Hagi was born in Istanbul to a Romanian god, a footballing god by that point. His dad, Georgi, playing for Galatasaray, and Georgi Hagi is in the stands when Yanis Hagi kind of slightly announced what he was all about when he scored that late winner against Hibs in the league midweek, but he really announced himself, of course, with those 2 goals against Braga in the comeback first leg home win at Ibrox, and that put us into a tie against. That was the last 16. So that was the playoff round of 32, and that put us into a last 16 tie against Bayer Leverkusen. Georgie Hagi's in the stand for the game at Ibrox against Braga, watching his boys scoring their 2 goals. Georgie Hagi was playing against Rangers in Europe in the 87-88 European Cup quarter-final. I was at that game as well, the home leg at Ibrox. And earlier on in that season, in the first round of that competition, we played Dynamo Kiev. the only other time we've played Dynamo Kiev, and we beat them in the All-European Cup. We put them out, and the next time we played Dynamo Kiev was this season in the European Cup, the Champions League, albeit the third qualifying round, and we end up we're playing Steaua Bucharest again. In between the two games in 87-88, we played Górnik Zabrze of Poland. I didn't go to the Górnik game for some reason back in 87-88, probably financial, I can't quite remember. But this season, I've been to see the Polish national team at Hampden in between Dynamo Kiev and Steaua Bucharest playing Rangers in Europe in the same season again. 69-70, the first season we played Steaua Bucharest, the first time we ever played them in Europe. This will be the fourth, depending on what you think about FCSB, if they are Steaua Bucharest. But the first time we played them, of the three previous times we've played somebody called Steaua Bucharest in European competition, was in the 69-70 Cup Winners' Cup, and we beat them. We put them out. In the next round, we get eliminated too early for a club of Rangers standing in those days, and we sacked the manager, Davy White. We get put out by Górnik Zabrze of Poland, and that led to Davy White getting sacked. In came Willie Waddle, and he would lead us to our only European trophy in the new camp in Barcelona, where Steaua Bucharest played the second of their two European finals. Barcelona being the team they beat in the first of them. There's quite a few coincidences going on there, but the main thing for me is Jorgi Hagi, who, not the main thing, but adding to the whole kind of just weird, magical kind of, there's something, runes or something's going on here. Jorgi Hagi signed for Steaua Bucharest the season before I saw him at Ibrox. He signed the previous season, kind of into the previous season, because he was a player still at that point with, what's his name, Sportul Stadionescu, but it's basically the sporting club of students anyway. It was a kind of Argentinos Juniors phase of the career of the Maradona of the Carpathians. This was, everybody knew he was world class. This club was too small to hold on to. Where was it going to go? When was it going to go? Well, Steaua Bucharest had won the European Cup at the end of the previous season, 85-86. And that was a magical sports washing moment for the disgusting, horrific Ceausescu regime in Romania. Excuse me. And so they wanted a bit more of that. So that Steaua Bucharest were in the Super Cup match. Of course, as we know at Rangers, we established the Super Cup. We invented the Super Cup, and it was when we were the holders of the Cup Winners' Cup, and we played Ajax, who were the holders of the European Cup. So Steaua were the holders of the European Cup, and they were playing this game, and for the glory of Romania, they just said to this club that Hagi was at, Sportul Stadion, I can't remember what it was. We just want to borrow him. We're just going to borrow him from you for this one game. He's going to be loaned to Steaua for this one prestigious game, the Super Cup match in Monaco. It just become a one-off game at that point. The final get played at the Stade Louis II for a few seasons because it was a brilliant junket for all the UEFA bigwigs. But who was that game against? I'm going to say Hagi scored the only goal of the game. He won the Super Cup, and he never went back. He just stayed at Steaua until 1990. But who was that game against? Who were the holders of the Cup Winners' Cup in 1986? It was Dynamo Kiev. It's just weird. It all seems to be working towards some sort of magic, some sort of voodoo. I don't know. It's this is good or bad for Philip Clement, but this is your Fatek. Rangers are back in the steroid-addled Europa League 36-team group stage, of the third of the eight games we'll play in that group stage. Preview pod coming to you in association with Gersnet, live on YouTube every Friday at 9 p.m, every Sunday at 9:30 p.m, and also sponsored by Dr. Wolf's VSAN. Dr. Wolf, you seen the adverts for Dr. Wolf's VSAN? It's, I just started noticing them this week, actually. Sky Sports News, watching Sky Sports News, and they're on in between, they're on the adverts in between Sky Sports News, and it's not just because I'm told I'm the biggest cause of that kind of dryness in the west of Scotland, but also it's the diagram they put up. The doctor, Dr. Wolf. I know the ladies are a lot tougher than wishes like me, but it just seems a bit, for a delicate area. It just Dr. Wolf. She's probably a female doctor, but it just seems a bit kind of a wolf. It's not a nice name, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, what's it got to do with me? But it's the diagram they put up. It's that kind of secondary school sex education diagram of in this advert. It's a diagram of the women's reproductive organs. It's no in any way. The one you would get in your biology books, textbooks at secondary school. And it's just that kind of, and it's because that shape that it reminds me of the way Rangers are playing. It's a kind of Rangers heat map. I don't mean heat as it's. I'm not trying to say we're playing like a bunch of fannies. I don't mean that. It's no that way. It's the shape, the outline. It's not in any way sexual. It's just a kind of pattern. And not Jock Stein, Celtic, that like Steaua Bucharest, are the only team from their country to win the European Cup, and they won one final, and then they lost a final 3 years later, same as Steaua Bucharest. And Jock Stein was the manager for both them, and he used to do kind of proto heat maps on a jotter. He would take out a wee jotter, a wee notepad with him when he would go to recce Celtic's opponents in Europe, and he would just basically, the top of the page was the goal that team were shooting towards, and the bottom of the page was the goal they were defending. He would just get a pen or a pencil, and he would just draw where the ball was going. He would just watch the game and just sit and draw where the ball's over the left wing, it's the right wing, and at the end of the game he would just look down and like the heaviest lines or where they had the ball most often, and that's why I'll put my defenders to mark the left wing or whatever. And it just, when I was watching, before I'd ever seen one of the Dr. Wolf V-San adverts, I only saw them for the first time this week, I was watching Rangers on Sunday, and all the accusations about us not having any identity, which don't really make any sense, because we're getting told we play just nothing but long balls and balls from side to side. I know why that question's got to get asked. I've been asked on behalf of the fans, and this is what the fans are all saying. So it's quite right to ask that question. But again, the manager coming back is a bit facetious. The manager thought with that one, but he's saying, "Well, how can we pass the ball side to side and knocking it over the top all the time?" But I also feel, as disingenuous as that answer, maybe a bit unfair as that answer was, I also feel that it's unfair that we're being told we don't have an identity, but at the same time we're wedded to 4-2-3-1. So what the tactic's going to be. So that's that. You can't complain about not having an identity, but also that's the way we move the ball. It's very clear. It might not be working, but it's a very clear identity. How we're playing football, and thinking of that, I started thinking, how would you do that? Draw that as a plan, and I thought, I'm drawing the sex education, outline of the women's, reproductive organs. Because I'm not trying to. It's no in any way fun, when it's drawn like that. It's no. Jack Butland, you'd say he's the kind of last line of defence, so he's right at the very kind of bottom of that draw. If he was an Israeli international, his middle name would be Hyman. I don't know. It's that he's just doing it, and then there's nothing happening. The fun section, that's you want as little happening there as possible if you're Rangers. That kind of just in front of Jack Butland, but you're taking you up to the kind of basically just where the cervix starts, and that's where Proper and Suter are just passing the ball from side to side. They do the possession. They do the possession for us, and they're passing the ball for the side to side, and then there's nothing. Barron and Diamond are either coming down to sit beside the two centre halves, or they're going right up to be beside Tom Lawrence at number 10. So this whole, and the whole cervix thing in that drawing is totally empty, and it's kind of expanding out in a V shape because we've got nothing in the middle of the park. There's nothing in the centre there, and I'm talking in terms of the biological, the kind of reproductive organs. There's nothing in the centre there. It's empty, and that's the way it is in the diagram as well. And Barry Ferguson would just he would right in the middle, but it's totally empty, and we pass the ball out to the side. They go out to the side, and it goes out to the wings, and with the underlapping and the overlapping with the fullback and the wide man in the front three, up and down each wing, it kind of goes up the way and then goes back out the way and curls back. It's like the fallopian tubes. That's the way the fallopian tubes go out. So I couldn't help thinking that's the same. And then the V-San thing came up on the telly, and I thought I'm going to get a sponsorship deal there because that's exactly how Rangers are playing. I'm sponsored by that, and I'm talking to you about Rangers against Steaua Bucharest in 1994. I watched Milan live on the telly, beating Barcelona 4-0 in Athens in the Champions League final, and for me that was a kind of apex. I was still a young man at the time as well, and you get me excited about football the younger you are. But I was like, yeah, this is the greatest performance I've ever seen in my life. And I think it's only 3 times maybe the European Cup final / Champions League final has been won by 4 clear goals, and that's the greatest wins. Real Madrid beating Eintracht Frankfurt, no wonder I've tried to forget their name, in 1960 European Cup final at Hampden, and then you'd Milan beating Barcelona in 1994. In between times, I didn't see this live. it was Milan beating Steaua Bucharest by 4 clear goals in the Nou Camp Stadium in Barcelona. You have Rangers, our two, we played a European final in the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan Stadium in Sevilla, and we lost it in penalties. Steaua Bucharest, their first European final was the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan. The only other European club final played in the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan Stadium, Sevilla Stadium, where we lost the 2022 Europa League final on penalties. Steaua Bucharest won the European Cup on penalties against Barcelona. It's Steaua Bucharest who play in red and blue. They played all white that night. You can see the team group behind me, back to front, of course. Because I'm just, I'm all about the youth, I'm all about there's no editing, there's no graphics, and even you do see my fat, old, ugly face. It's back to front. Everything in the background is back to front. It's the quality I'm bringing you that's bringing in the youth. That's why I know I'm all right to talk about adult themes at the beginning of these pods, because there is nobody under 50. Watching this pod, I mean, if anybody's watching that at all. But it was in the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan. They were all white with the trim, the Jordanescu team. Mio Dragbella Dedici. He played the first guy to win the European Cup with 2 different teams. He's a beautiful, graceful centre half of Romania and Steaua Bucharest at that point in time. But then he came back to Ibrox. For that Red Star Belgrade team. He went to Yugoslavia. There's a kind of crossover population. An ethnicity that's part Yugoslav, part Serbian, part Romanian. There's a lot of that going on in that part of the world that I don't understand. It's really fascinating. It's on in every part of the world, obviously. People with kind of mixed ethnicities or whatever is the idea that we're on. Don't start me in the nationalism thing. But he was playing Mio Dragbella Dedici, the first guy ever to win the European Cup with 2 different teams. Well, he won it in '86, and then comes to Ibrox when they only got to the semi-finals in '87, '88, and then he's winning it with Red Star Belgrade in 1991, and is at Ibrox. And it's a privilege to see him both those times. Fantastic player. Lakatush and Ballant were the only guys to score. They both played that night at Ibrox a couple of years later, but they were the only guys to score their penalties in the penalty shootout against Barcelona. But Helmut Dukadam, their goalkeeper, he saved all 4 Barcelona penalties. No Barcelona player scored that. Barcelona hadn't been champions of Europe at that point in time. Their bottle completely went in Spain. 65,000 Barcelona fans in the stadium playing against a team from behind the Iron Curtain with 0 fans, but 0-0. Steaua won it on penalties, and that was that. And then they play, having beaten Barcelona, they then play their next European final, their last European final, Romania's last European final, 3 years later against Milan in the Nou Camp Stadium. And Barcelona get pumped 4-0. 2 goals for Marco van Basten, 2 goals for Hullet. And as much as Fabio Capello's Milan Inter, they had this sort of magical in 1995. Most experts agree that the high point for Milan, which Capello took on the Arrigo Sacchi model, the high point was that 4-0 win against Steaua in the 1989 final. And I eventually got to watch it on YouTube, but because the English teams were out of Europe at that point in time, it wasn't shown live on terrestrial television. The deregulation of TV rights and that hadn't really happened, right? There was no satellite TV, there was, but it was very much in its early stages. I certainly didn't have access to it, so I never saw that one live. But that was Arrigo Sacchi's model, and if you've read your Inverting the Pyramid with Jonathan Wilson's famous book on football tactics, the history of football tactics, I haven't looked at it for years. I should probably have read this to double check my facts before, but I'm sure, because I was so obsessed, I loved that Milan team. I eventually went to see them in 1994, just after they'd won that European Cup. I went to see them in the Milan derby at the San Siro, because I worshipped them. I still think they're the greatest. In terms of the football they produced, there's obviously only one greatest for me, but Arrigo Sacchi, the idea when he first arrived there, of course, never having played professional football, he had these players, these world-class players. The story goes, I'm sure this is the story, how it's told, and I maybe not remembering this right, but at Milanello, their training facility, somebody's sent to spy on them, and somebody had spies on them, and he sees them all these players, Ruud Hullet, Marco van Basten, Carlo Ancelotti, Franco Baresi, these guys, 11 of them, the first 11's on the park, on a training park, but they're not playing against anybody, and there's no ball. They're fully stripped and all that, and they're moving up and down the park, they're running up and down, running back and forth, and Arrigo sack it. There's no opponent. There's only 11 men on the park. And Arrigo Sacchi's standing at the side of the park and he's shouting, they've got the ball in their own box. What do you do? So it makes the players go and they run to crowd the opposition in their own box, even though the opposition are only there. You know, they've got the ball at the halfway line. Where are you going to go? And the players off to. So he's got everybody totally organised. Everyone gets back to the Ajax team of the 70s, total football and what have you. Everyone's a top up of that, right up to. And this is an influence on tiki-taka and what have you, going forward as well. Tiki-taka and what else have we had? There's some other. Even your gegenpress, I would imagine, it's all influenced from that Milan team. Who Pep Guardiola played against them in that 1994 Champions League final. They got absolutely tanked. This is the season the Rangers could have been playing against that Milan team that just 12 months beforehand, when we didn't get into we just missed out in the Champions League final against them when Marseille beat them. Basel Boli only go. I'm getting distracted here, but Guardiola learned from this Milan team. The whole point is to try and segue this from Steaua Bucharest and the coincidences of their European finals with our European finals to our manager Philippe Clement, as Sacchi was laughed at for doing this. He was laughed at for having these players so incubated and insulated against even playing opposition, that he's having them running about a training field, not playing against any opponent, and with no ball there, just to get them. Their whole thing was to compress this space. I'm not going to talk about it, but this is what I think Philippe Clement is doing. It might be the mistake that he's making. It's why I kind of still believe, I've got to be honest, there's a lot of other reasons as to why I feel perhaps a delusional way that we need to hang on to some bloody manager for more than a year. That in itself doesn't necessarily qualify Philippe Clement. If the guy's not good enough, the guy's not good enough. But I feel as if that's what's going on just now. I don't know how much more they could have talked about the fact it was going to be a reset, a rebuild. When John Bennett did eventually come out and talk about the problems we were having with the Copland Road stand and the general state of the club, and Clement himself all through the summer, before the summer, in his term last season at Ibrox, and ever since, it's a rebuild, a reset. We have, no matter how often he says it, doesn't make it any less true that we've sold 16 players and brought in 11, and the fans generally wanted rid of. We wanted a clear out. We've wanted a clear out for the last 2 seasons. It's taken 2 seasons, but we have got rid of the team that won 55, except for Hagi, who's not registered to play tonight. He's not in the European squad, and James Tavernier, who every Celtic fan thinks is our best player, but every Rangers, maybe that's why Rangers fans hate him. There's so many Rangers fans just think he shouldn't have been in the team at all, even though we had 2 seconds of another guy playing right back on Sunday, and he is responsible as anybody for giving away the only goal of the game that defeated Rangers. So I feel as if the manager has been quite right to not think about basically the state of play in the league in general. And I can only back that up if, qualify what I'm saying, explain what I'm saying, and how I agree with it by talking about my instincts. I mentioned this on Sunday night when I was coming back down the road for a week on a holiday in Dundee on Saturday, and I was getting passed by all these Celtic buses and all these Aberdeen buses. They're going to the game at Parkhead, and I wasn't feeling this buzz about, oh well, we can't fail today because one or both of the teams above us are going to drop points. And when Aberdeen come back to 2 each after being 2-0 down to Celtic, again the instinct should be, oh brilliant, Celtic have mucked things up, made a fool of themselves. No, I was thinking that's no good. That's no good for us, because this was the talk that night, and the next morning was, this is Rangers can claw this back. And I'm thinking, we're talking as if we're going to win the league here. Rangers have got a chance to gain ground, and it wasn't about just getting back to second place. It was about a league race, which I just don't think is going to happen. I haven't thought is going to happen all season. The noise has been, you don't even have to read between the lines. Clement and a chairman who, is still relatively new to the role, having come in last season. Stuart Robertson leaving as well, and we get Bisgrove, and then Bisgrove bailed, and then the Clement Road stand, it's stalled, and it's everything off field is in a total state of flux. And anybody who has managed to speak to us, and it's been Clement mostly, has been saying, this is a reset, we're going to have to, they're telling us to write the season off. Now, a lot of us haven't thought it's going to be by finishing third, or maybe worse. I certainly didn't. I wasn't factoring that in. But Aberdeen being brilliant isn't our fault. That's not something you can blame Clement for. Aberdeen being completely atypical in the start to the season, certainly from the last 30 years, I would say. What was it, 91 that Aberdeen took us to the last day of the season? That's 33 years ago, 34 coming up on. They took us the league race to the last day of the season. They weren't only too bad for the rest of the 90s, but they plummeted pretty fast. Even I think, and I can remember that Aberdeen won the league 80, 84 and 85. I don't think any of those Aberdeen teams under Alex Ferguson actually started as well as they've started this season. We knew Jimmy Tellin was a good manager. Aberdeen fans were certainly very excited about him, but we'd never heard of the guy until he came to Aberdeen, and nobody thought he was this good. Anybody who tells you he was going to start the season like this, they knew he was going to start the season like this, is lying, because it just wasn't supposed to happen. I think also trying to turn around and say, well, this is what we should do. If Aberdeen can do it, then why can't we? As a condemnation of Rangers. Well, I went into that on Sunday night as to why Rangers can't do this kind of thing. Why we can't go the same way as Aberdeen, or just the same as we couldn't go the same way as Dundee United back in the 80s. We're just too big. Also, it's not that easy. It's a kind of freak. It's a freakish level of success. I know Jimmy Tellin did incredibly well with Elfsborg in Sweden, and it's been a great signing for Aberdeen, but nobody thought it was going to go this well. The start to the season, and it is only still a start to the season. I think when there was this hullabaloo, almost natural, very natural. Both Aberdeen and Celtic have dropped points on Saturday. Rangers can get right back into this, and that was used as a way of saying this is a disgrace that we've failed to turn up. The attitude's all wrong, the psychology's all wrong. Clement may be incubating us against the vagaries of a league challenge or whatever, to concentrate on the development of his tactics, of his blueprint, of his game plan that is hopefully going to set us in good stead for years to come. The idea being one bad season leads to 6 or 7 good seasons. Not being able to beat Celtic for a year, for 2 years, is going to lead to us beating Celtic regularly. Most of the time for the next decade or something like that. This is the idea, to go, unless you've got £200 million spare going that you can give to us to spend over the next 2 or 3 seasons, we're going to have to do something. Kind of root and branch rearrangement of the playing side of things to be able to perform in Europe and domestically to the levels that the Rangers support demands. So I don't see a great problem with what he's doing, but perhaps his determination to concentrate to the point where he's almost telling the players, I'm not expecting you to win this game. Don't worry about it, because don't get me wrong, I get the fact that part of being a Rangers player, part of developing as a Rangers player, is knowing that you have to win every week, even when you can't. He's maybe gone too far that way. He's maybe gone a bit Ancelotti, and we don't need an opponent. Doesn't matter. It's about concentrating on your game. And if he can get us to that point where we're winning European Cup finals for nothing, that's absolutely great. But I still think it's we need to concentrate on what we're doing, and the Aberdeen thing skews our judgment. It's skewing our judgment of what the manager's doing just now. You look at the games, we've played 8 games so far. There's just talk about he's losing 50% of games just now, Clement, because joining on to last season, was it 9 of the last 18 games we've won? We're only winning 50% of games or whatever it is. Fair enough, but I think you have to look at it as this season's a complete reset. Last season only counts in terms of telling us that we know he's a good manager. Winning in Spain, against Spanish opposition for the first time in our European history, winning the League Cup, getting us back into a title race. I think that kind of stuff has proven that he can do. He's not some fly-by-night. This is a completely new team to him. And then this season, it is 16 players out, 11 players in. That's not, and I think part of the reason part of the reason he got this contract extension, which is now being held up as he's conned us. I think part of the reason he's got the contract extension is because he's been um, as John Gilligan more or less said, the spokesman for the club, while there's been all this lack of action in the boardroom, while there's hardly any board members there. I think the other reason could be the fact that the shenanigans, the letdown with the Copland Road stand, that must have cost us hundreds of thousands, if not millions. The failure to be in Ibrox this season for the first 2 months of the season, that's cost his budget. It's cost maybe the activity on his transfer system, but we lost the CEO as well, as I say. So he's not been able to complete his shopping list, I don't think. And part of the reason his contract's been extended is probably because he knows it's going to come to this. He knows he's going to get this amount of flack for what he's trying to do. To cut the man a break, to put it in more perspective, I would say look at our schedule for the first rotation, the first phase of this SPFL Premiership campaign. Away at Celtic, Parkhead, Tynecastle first day of the season. I know we do well at Tynecastle traditionally. We do better than most at Tynecastle, but Hearts did finish third last season, albeit it's turned out they've had a terrible season so far. They did finish third last season. They were the third best team in Scotland. And we've gone to Tynecastle on the very first day of the season with Parkhead, Tannadice, and Rugby Park, and we're going to have Pittodrie next week. That's a horrific start. We've lost 2 games, we've drawn 1, we've won 5. We've not been to Pittodrie yet. It could end up be 3 losses, but I instinctively, like everybody else, and I was saying it on Sunday, the idea of finishing third, you just instinctively say no manager can survive that. But it's not Philip Clement's fault that Aberdeen are so good while he gets on with the reset that he was supposed to be getting on with. And while Rangers teams, every Rangers manager since Walter Smith has lost by a single goal at Rugby Park 1 or 2 times, conceded a late equaliser. We consistently make a fool of ourselves, even before the pitch was plastic. They still had the grass in. Alan McCoist went there. His first full season as manager was in the top flight. And we lost at Rugby Park Sunday, just usual kind of. So the story we've been seeing ever since there. And Clement has won at Rugby Park. He's in a difficult game. We had Cortez, or we lost Cortez as a result of that game, but we were 1-0 down and we come back to win 2-1, and it was the difficult conditions, stormy conditions and what have you. So he's got the ability to do it. Just when he's developing a new team, we've got all these new signings. This was something that was talked about in the presser yesterday by both Clement and by Tom Lawrence. We've got all these new players trying to settle in at the same time. It's to only do as badly as Stephen Gerrard's and Graham Murty's Rangers, as Alan McCoist's Rangers did. I don't think there's anything particularly to be alarmed about that. I'm hearing people telling us it's the worst performance they've ever seen. It's the worst football Rangers have ever played. And people are qualifying it by saying in the top flight, obviously. But this time last season, the very first match of last season's league campaign, when Michael Beale went there and we lost 1-0 at Kilmarnock. And we had Abdallah Sima playing. Abdallah Sima, Sam Lammers, remember, announced Lammers. That was the Clamour. No rhyme intended. The Clamour from the Rangers support last summer. Announced Lammers, announced Dessers, these guys that we're now trashing and getting rid of. And we went there with this team and we lost 1-0, and it was far worse. We were far more anonymous in that game than we were today. I can list other Rangers performances that have been worse than that down the years. But there's no doubt, I'm not for a second saying that last Sunday wasn't abysmal and a total non-entity of a game. But I was ready for us to lose it. I was ready for us to lose that match in that fashion, and I've seen us doing it so often, so many times, that I know Philip Clement shouldn't be blamed for it. And I know when he does have a brand new squad signed over the course of the summer, and probably a shopping list to say that wasn't in any way complete because of various just terrible stuff going on in the background. And I can't really properly blame him. I'm not expecting us to win anything this season. If we can get a cup, fantastic. I'm certainly not expecting us to win the league. But the problem comes in if we're going to finish below that. But I don't think Aberdeen being brilliant is, and it would be absolutely brilliant. Philip Clement, I don't think that's Philip Clement's fault. Not beating Celtic, that's major. And we've had a lot of foreign managers. The foreign thing's getting brought up just now. Is that a problem? They don't get Scottish football. It's been a good thing and a bad thing, and I mean that like Dick Advocaat coming in and twice losing by 4 goals to Celtic and twice beating them by 4 goals. It's like the foreign, particularly the Dutch thing, of just not caring. No, it's a good thing and a bad thing. You don't care. If you're going to get humped, you're going to get humped. It's the same as anything else. But also, you have so little fear of Celtic. You don't really care that on a good day you'll win by 4 clear goals. The worst one for me was actually when we lost 3-0 to Celtic, and it was the last All Firm game of the season. The league was already had been won by Martin O'Neill Celtic weeks previously, and it was just about pride. And they beat us 3-0 going on 5 or 6. I think it was 0-0 at half time. Just Sean Maloney made his debut for Celtic that day. And at that time, 3-0 was the worst defeat we'd ever suffered. I think it equalled it, the worst defeat we'd ever suffered at Ibrox in an Old Firm game. And then, who was I to know? A decade or so down the line, Pedro Caixinha, we'd lose 5-1 to Celtic at Ibrox. And again, it's the foreign thing. The foreign managers not care enough. Certainly, and we're not counting, an Englishman as foreign in this case, because Steven Gerrard's Rangers never lost to anybody. Really, it was only 3 times maybe we lost by more than a single goal under Gerrard, and it was 2-0 or 3-1. It was by 2 goals. The 2 or 3 times that we lost by more than a single goal. Never get thrashed under Gerrard at all. Clement has had 1 thrashing off Celtic, and it was this season when the squad's just changed. And it's not for the best. People are shouting this whole thing, but it's not was it? We're not rebuilding, we're downsizing. I think he's more or less admitting that. He was saying that today in the press conference. We don't have the money. We are downsizing, so we've got to strip it back down to the bare bones to make sure we can compensate for the downsizing financially. You've got to do something major, and that's what he's doing. But he's the 1 thrashing off Celtic. The thing for Clement is he's never beaten Celtic. The 4 games he played against them last season, 1 draw, other ones lost by a single goal. At Parkhead with 10 men and stuff like that. Outplayed and outthought at various times in all those games, but never thrashed. And that in itself, I think, is it's nothing to be proud of. It's something to be worried about. But I think it speaks to the fact that he's cognizant of what it means to play against Celtic. And I saw Rangers putting in huge effort in these games. I don't think it'll take much to get us there. I'm hoping to watch his plan kicking into action. One of the other criticisms, he made a rod for his own back with the we're going to be better in October or November. You'll see us at our best then. Today he was kind of changing that. So yesterday in the pre-match press, he was changing that to we're going to be better in October and November than we are in August and September, and we are. Well, some people are disagreeing with that. They're saying we're going backwards. We're better under Michael Beale, and that's disingenuous. I feel with Michael Beale and with Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, it just became really apparent. I don't think we're actually at that point yet now where we think that people are certainly accusing the players of not playing for the manager, therefore he's lost the dressing room. Statements the players are making, I think, maybe being misconstrued. I think the leadership group, we constantly talk about this leadership group under Clement, because I think they've been given the job of saying the bad stuff. He doesn't know what to do that, because he's the manager in charge of this project. Now, I'm old school, as old school as anybody else. I did like it when Walter Smith would come out and say, we're crap today. That just wasn't good enough. Crap. But Philip Clement can't do that, because he doesn't have the credit in the bank that allows him to do that. He can only do that once. The second time, the fans will go, he just keeps saying we're crap. He's the guy that's supposed to be doing something about it. He comes out with these stats and what have you that try to turn a pig's ear into a silk purse, try to polish a turd. But he's in charge of these players. He's talking to these players every day. He's got to give them a sense of we're going to get there. There's progress being made, and sometimes the stats he's pointing out are absolutely right to try and stop people going OTT in the criticism of the team. So I think he's got to build up the credit. He's going to have some serious wins under his belt before he can get to a stage where he can just go, that was just shite, and everybody will go, oh, that's nice. I think that we're not wanting Clement to tell us that the team played terribly. Even though we say that, what we're just trying to say is we think that we're terrible and we're unhappy about it. It's a frustration. But there's a few. I think we've got the Belgian Jimmy Tellin. The thing is, he's won the Belgian title 3 times as a manager. He's not Jimmy Tellin, because Jimmy Tellin is one of these guys, Michael Beale, or maybe more like Jose Mourinho. Their playing career wasn't up to much. Has ended. I think he played in the lower leagues, and I think he got injured in his 20s, and that was him. So he had time to build up that kind of guru type knowledge of football from the bottom up. The very kind of knowledge that Steven Gerrard said he couldn't do because he was too busy playing at the top level, so he brought in Michael Beale for that. Excuse me. But then Clement has too busy playing international football and just had a kind of ideal football career, playing for Belgium and whatever, playing for big clubs and Coventry. But he wins the league with Genk. And these coincidences, I'll give you a break for the series stuff, but Genk, Yanis Hagi played for Genk. Alec McLeish was manager of Genk. Genk were formed from a merger from two old Belgian clubs, Winterslag and Waterschei. Waterschei's greatest ever moment in European football was reaching the semi-finals of the 82-83 Cutler's Cup. They were pumped by Aberdeen, which Alec McLeish was playing. Anyway, the whole point is that Clement might be the wrong manager, as I say, for Rangers, but he's not a bad manager. He's not a bad manager in any way. We've got a guy in there that I kind of trust. It's certainly not. He's certainly not Michael Beale, who had very little managerial experience, and by the time he was at Sunderland, it was clear that he just didn't have it at all. We were criticising just this time last year. We're criticising the fact that Beale was overcomplicating things and changing the tactics too many times. Needed to play it simpler, and now we're slagging Clement for being 4-2-3-1. Now, I know that the two things can both be true at the same time. One could be too simplistic, one could be too complicated. The middle ground is always there to be had. But I feel that when we don't have the right players, and it's clear that the thing with the 4-2-3-1 is we don't have a 6. We don't have a proper 10. We don't have the proper centre forward. That we need to make that work. So that actually tells me that what he's doing is making sure that the system he's going to play to is the one thing that's set in stone, because we need stuff set in stone. If you're getting a rebuild, if you're getting you're basically training a whole squad, you're trying to train a whole club, you set down a template that does not change until the players are so familiar with it that they know how to. Picasso had to do his drawings of pigeons for these very realistic drawings of pigeons before he could do the abstract stuff. It actually convinces me more that we're on the right track. The fact that he keeps playing 4-2-3-1. He might change it tonight. He might change. You never know. But I don't know. But we're not at that stage yet, and he seems to know that. I don't have a problem with it. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that have been launched at him this week that maybe go, no, that's not true. The post-match excuses, I've dealt with that as far as I possibly can. I don't know what I'm talking about, obviously, but we'll talk for a while about Steaua. But I just think under Michael Beale and under Gio, it became really obvious really quickly that the players had lost it. That the players they were gone. They were gone in their heads. They were going out there wanting to play for the manager, but they couldn't, because it had just got to a stage where they had them befuddled. They'd lost all hope. They'd lost all sense of direction. They had to go. Remember the day against when we lost 1-0 to Celtic under Beale last season at Ibrox? This was Celtic really fragile. That was a disastrous result. That had long-term consequences. But it was like he's almost there, and he's almost there. It's still too soon. There's still mitigation to be had. The way I'm laying it all out just now for Clement, and then we lost 3-1 at home to Aberdeen, and the games we'd had in between were a bit ropey, kind of a narrow one. We'd beat Betis, but with a narrow 1-0 win over Motherwell that wasn't very convincing at all, and I think we beat Livingston in the League Cup. Quite, there was a long time between the first and second goals, even though we ended up winning 4-0. And then we lost at home to Aberdeen, and it was a complete car crash. And it was like, yeah, that's it, he's gone. It wasn't even emotional. It was just, we're sitting there all talking to each other. There was plenty of booing and all that from the stands, you know. But I remember us sitting there at half time, just going, who do you fancy? Who are we going to get in? It was just, that was it, he's gone. He's done. It was known, it was felt, and I'm not at that stage yet with Clement. There's a danger that I am at being counterintuitive, or, knowing what I'm like. There's a danger that I am thinking, just keep a manager for the sake of keeping a manager. That's just break the system. There might be somebody comes in and just turns it all around. Again, but we've had somebody coming in and turning it all around, 3 years in the trot now. We always come up against the undertow of the manager coming in halfway through the previous season, the undertow of the financial shenanigans since 2012, and even it took Steven Gerrard 3 seasons to get us to turn us into champions. 2 seasons, if you like, because we hit that season. We hit that season run in 2020, 2021. We're unstoppable, but even that season we did 0-0 at Livingston, which were all in a 2 each at Easter Road, which was just, oh God, it was early on this. Here we go again. But in Steven Gerrard's first season, he's drawn up a Pittodrie, conceding a last-minute equaliser at Pittodrie in his first league game, even though we're down to 10 men, losing 1-0 on the plastic at Livingston, Dolly Menga, at the same stage as we lost on Sunday there, and I'm seeing this as a fresh start for Clement. I'm not kind of taking this whole idea that he's taken us backwards from last season. I think that was inevitable. I think he's had to do that. It's going to have to happen with the players he's got rid of. So yeah, I'm just not at that stage at all with Clement yet. But tonight, if we lose tonight against Steaua Bucharest, I need to talk to you about Steaua Bucharest anyway. First thing to mention is they're owned by a guy called Gigi Bacali. George Gigi Bacali is a bit of a character. During the Second World War, Romania started out